Hey everybody, Scott Flanders here. Today we're going to go over another student critique from the Character Design Monster Lab. We're going to talk about some very important aspects of character design, from silhouette to line weight to having a variety of shape types. And if you want to learn even more tips, then you'll want to see what's going on in the premium course at proko.com/monsterlab. It has a lot more lessons, demos, assignments, and critiques. The premium course has nearly 4 hours of critiques for the first assignment. So, if you want to submit your work and get feedback from me personally on the next assignment, then you're going to want to go premium. Okay, let's jump in.
Okay, we're going to start with a few badgers. Not one badger, not a dozen, not a couple, but a few. 3 badgers. That's interesting. A few badgers. Wonder what that means. Is that the internet is a mysterious place. I'd first like to say I'm a huge fan of your work. Oh, thanks, man. Thank you very much. I started out with the idea of a rotting food garbage sort of creature, and eventually found myself really liking the idea of chunks of earth being carried around by roots. And while I did my initial drawings small, I found myself getting carried away with the idea. Well, that's a good thing. This has been a really fun creative exercise, and I can see where this concept stage of your workflow can help lead ultimately to a better idea through the process of elimination, or kit bashing in a sense. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, but with drawings, right? I'm looking forward to future lessons. Right on. Thanks, man. Okay, looks like we had some really good feedback here from some of the other critiquers on the site, some of the other artists. Alec is especially awesome, one of my buddies I work with here. Alec's pretty legit. If I were you, I would pay heed. Okay, but let's look at your art. The established precedents, previously established ideas. Grimer from Pokemon. Oh, yeah. Trubbish, trash Pokemon. Zombies, decay. Compost, mold, bugs, dirt, half-eaten. Baggy or boogeymen? Probably boogeymen. Characteristics, slimy, smells, decomposition, rotten, muddy. Okay, I'm getting the vibes here. Okay, one thing off the bat I just wanted to mention is there's a lot of cool drawings here, neat shapes. But one thing I see is the way you're using your values, like your shadow shapes in here, it's a bit noisy, basically. Your little shadow shapes that you're plugging in here, it's about like a 1/4 inch between each little shape of shadow. Watch this. It's almost like you're putting spots or patterning on the character. And I know that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to texture it. But what's happening is you're ending up with this, because your mid-tone value is actually kind of light, you're ending up with this sort of like, a lot of times I'll refer to it as like dancing. You know, this kind of like back and forth. That's a bit disruptive or noisy. I think you're on the right track in terms of, you know, the way you're thinking through your shadows and your texture. Like that's not a bad impulse or idea. It's just the execution is, you know, I think could be a little bit better. And the way I'd do that is you could do it a couple ways. Like one, you could just, and this is something you could do traditionally. I'm going to kind of simulate it here just using a darken layer. But basically when you're doing your fill here, Mr. Badgers, you want to be aware of the sort of the range of values that you're hitting. And here it's not so important to, the modeling of form is somewhat less of a priority, and it's more about, you know, establishing your ideas and getting the shapes right. So you want those shapes to read, right? And as they are right now, all that noise, this high contrast between these little notes of texture are basically getting in the way of the read of your silhouette. So what you could do in pencil, ooh, that sounds disturbing. But you see how, I'm not going to go through and do the whole thing, but you see how now just the character silhouette is reading better. Oh my gosh, sounds like a marker. But now he pops better on the page. And what you could have done there is just imagine with your pencil, as you're going and doing your fill, you're just pressing a little bit harder, right? So again, you're not getting that range of lights, but it's just helping your character read better. That's one thing you could do. You also, just like as you're locking these in, there's some areas where the shadows are going to be more intense, and you could play those up a little more. You could throw a lot more of this stuff into shadow than you have. If you still want some of that light, you know, you could like, boom, leave some of it. You know, if you're just trying to like maintain a little bit more of that form, you got to group your values a little bit more. Right now it's dancing. There's a sparkle back and forth between areas, really light areas, and these little dark pocks you're putting everywhere, little pock marks. And it's in every single image here that you're doing. Right now, a lot of your line work is pretty, your line weight is like similar throughout. It's kind of monotone, and you want to create some hierarchy, some distinction. So let's take this guy, for example. He's a good candidate. So what I'm going to do is, you can do it a couple ways. It's like you either have a couple drawing tools, and you need to use something in the B range, or you're just pressing significantly harder. I mean, you're not like breaking the lead, but you're just going to have to press a little bit harder, and maybe even go back and like restate lines. But check this out. So then you can do this with your pencil. I'm actually going to like push a drawing a little bit further. Most people refer to this as a holding line, or their outer contour line. It kind of just depends. I refer to it as a holding line because you can describe contour in the interior shapes as well. This to me is more about holding the art. It's more of like a graphic device. And it gives you an opportunity to like restate some of these shapes. This is when I do this sort of like a lot of the more angular work. Is I'll go back over those initial loose exploratory lines, and I'll restate some of them a little more angularity. You see that, like how that pops a little bit more? The diameter of the pencil line, it's not significantly wider, but it is wider. So watch, check it out. Here, like some of it is even getting lost. And then where I'm coming in, it's quite a bit thicker and darker because I'm pressing harder, like more opacity, or using a drawing tool that is actually just a little bit like a softer lead or graphite, whatever, or like those Prisma Verithin, like you'd use the black. That's just like some general execution stuff. Another thing is, I notice all your characters in your line work in here, they're almost entirely organic shapes. Almost like, you can almost say they're lumpy. I'm not trying to be a jerk when I say that, but they're a little bit lumpy. That is part of the nature of like organic shapes, right? These kind of almost like tumors, like tumorous, asymmetrical. They're shapes that they're less contrived, they're naturally occurring. But here, there's so much of that it becomes a bit monotone, like music that's monotone, like there's no range, right? No diversity, no contrast, right? Or like a monochromatic palette. It's only like one color, right? It can be cool, but it can also get boring. And that's kind of what, to me, is going on in some of your shapes. They're a bit monotone. It's very samey. So the way I combat that in my stuff, I kind of just outlined it there. But, I'll start off with these very loose gesture lines on a character. Super loose. Like, I don't know, crazy loose. And I'll make a little trash guy here for you. The way I draw is kind of like continuous line. Like continuous pressure. It's part of why it's so messy. I'm not doing a lot of like this kind of stuff. I'm like hatching. But a character like a trash monster man really lends itself to designing from abstraction. Talked to a lot of my mentorship students about the stuff I've mentioned on videos before. Designing for abstraction can be a really good strategy depending upon the subject matter. Only afterwards, like I'll come back and do this kind of, if I'm going to come in and hatch. Like if it was an actual pencil drawing. I do that initial block in really loose, right? But then after the fact, so it doesn't feel so monochrome or monotone, so I can introduce some like contrast, some change, some variation in the line quality. I'll go back after the fact, and this is when I'll do this, a lot of this, like, the kind of carvy part, the angular part. I do that after the fact a lot of times. I come back through and I'm kind of like exaggerating these planes, almost thinking of it like a low poly model. And I don't do it everywhere. Sometimes I do. But most of the time it's, there's a kind of a rhythm, a give and take, a push and pull. Some areas get really loose and, they keep the curves, and some areas really tighten up. And I use this chisel eraser tool quite a bit to reinforce that stuff. Just some contrast in your mark making, okay? Because when I look across your characters, like everything is, if I go back and kind of outline this or follow your lines, everything is like lumps. It's like lump. This series of lumps, okay? That's okay. You really do have good instincts here. And I think the designing from abstraction is probably like a natural kind of inclination for you. Like this stuff is cool. But the way to push it further is to introduce that contrast. And there's not like a hard rule or science of when you should employ that idea. It's the way you choose to employ it is going to be, partly how you distinguish yourself, right? Is the sort of the ratio at which you incorporate that kind of thing. And you may not incorporate it at all. Like there are some artists that it's almost like all the shapes are soft, organic curves. It's just part of their preferences and part of their strength. And I tend to move between the two. I like that change up. Probably good spots on yours are your stone outcroppings. I'd maybe be a little more aggressive about some of those shapes. Something like some Pride Rock kind of stuff. Something like that. Like boom. Or onto this guy, right? Like it's basically the rocks are good spots to introduce those kind of shapes. And you'll see this stuff in a lot of, it's a pretty common, most artists that have to deal in organic creature design, they're doing the same thing I'm talking about. Like if you've ever seen stylized golems, like creatures, constructs, elemental constructs in games like a World of Warcraft or really any stylized game ever, that's a thing you're going to see. You're going to see this interplay between flowing curves and then these hard angular transitions. Your windmill that you have with this character does that, but it's a prop, and not all your characters have props. So you either do it through your rocks, you do it through your props. Could do it in some of your trees, depending on the kind of tree branches. I'm going to say increase range. Let's see, like in shape rhythms, shape treatment, more variation between your curves, your rounded forms, and your angular forms, right? Because they do different things. They have different functions. Typically, I think of Baymax from Big Hero 6, right? Marshmallow Man, friendly guy. Snowman, friendly guy, right? But all of a sudden you take that snowman and you start putting angular spike armor on him, right? Or those look like silly dragon wings or something. But you start putting on, these kind of shapes, these more angular shapes, and all of a sudden it changes the emotional tone of the character, right? It's aggression or speed, assertiveness, right? There's some direction. It's pointing at something. This changes up the flow. It's a different approach to lines, angles, or angular shapes and lines. So you need to clamp your values or group your values. Right now, the range is too high contrast, I would say, the way you're using your shadow shapes on here. You're on the right track, but it's a bit too sporadic and monotone all over the place. And we want to introduce some more diversity in terms of the treatment of your edges and your shapes. It's honestly, sometimes the best way to sum it up is you're flowing through here, right? I'm flowing through this, and then all of a sudden, it's like fighting or something, right? There's a lot of curves, and then all of a sudden you throw in a straight, right? And it's that change up that breaks your opponent's concentration and that they're not expecting. That's when you change that rhythm, that's when you get through, right? It's boom, right? Or it's all straights, and then you go curve, pop, 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 boom. It's the same idea. But seriously, it really is the same idea. Give myself a workout there. Ooh.
Thanks, everyone. And I'd like to see your work too. So join the community at proko.com/monsterlab and get the full experience. There's still time to submit the next assignment for a chance to be a part of the video critique. Okay, see you all next time.